What's up, guys? We are continuing our little mini-series on T.S. Eliot's brilliant, excellent poem, The Dry Salvages. And there aren't too many disclaimers in this video. We already know the structure of these videos. We already know what time is. So, without further ado, let's get right into it. This is T.S. Eliot's The Dry Salvages, Section 3. I sometimes wonder if that is what Krishna meant, among other things, or one way of putting the same thing, that the future is a faded song, a royal rose or a lavender spray of wistful regret for those who are not yet here to regret, pressed between yellow leaves of a book that has never been opened. And the way up is the way down, the way forward is the way back. You cannot face it steadily, but this thing is sure, that time is no healer, the patient is no longer here. When the train starts, and the passengers are settled to fruit, periodicals, and business letters, and those who saw them off have left the platform, their faces relax from grief into relief, to the sleepy rhythm of 100 hours. Fare forward, travelers, not escaping from the past into different lives or into any future. You are not the same people who left that station or who will arrive at any terminus. While the narrowing rails slide together behind you, and on the deck of the drumming liner, watching the furrow that widens behind you, you should not think the past is finished, or the future is before us. At nightfall, in the rigging and the aerial, is a voice descanting, though not to the ear, the murmuring shell of time, and not in any language. Fare forward, you who think that you are voyaging. You are not those who saw the harbor receding, or those who will disembark. Here between the hither and the farther shore, while time is withdrawn, consider the future and the past with an equal mind. At the moment which is not of action or inaction, you can receive this. Quote, on whatever sphere of being the mind of a man may be intent at the time of death. Unquote. That is the one action, and the time of death is every moment, which shall fructify in the lives of others. And do not think of the fruit of action. Fare forward. O voyagers, O seamen, you who came to port, and you whose bodies will suffer the trial and judgment of the sea, or whatever event, this is your real destination. So Krishna, as when he admonished Arjuna on the field of battle, not farewell, but fare forward, voyagers. Beautiful, huh? Alright. So, like the last videos, let's take it line by line. I sometimes wonder if this is what Krishna meant, among other things, or one way of putting the same thing. So Krishna was a figure in ancient Indian mythology, and as mentioned in the last bit here, what's that guy's name? Arjuna had a difficulty because he had to face it. He was on the battlefield and he didn't know what to do. The reason why is because I think he was stuck in the past and the future. He was like over-analyzing his decision. So Krishna comes down and he essentially tells him, you need to act, and you need to act with regard to the present moment, not in regard to this make-believe future or romanticized past that you've constructed in your head. You need to act, and you need to act in regards to the present. So what does Krishna say? That time is a faded, that the future is a faded song, a royal rose or a lavender spray of wistful regret for those who are not yet here to regret. So what does that mean? First of all, it's a very beautiful turn of phrase. What does that mean? Essentially, what that means is, notice how he's associating the future with wistful regret. So the future is not being associated with positive qualities, but negative ones. So essentially what he's saying, as I've written in my little margins here, people are mourning a future that hasn't happened yet, whether it be deaths, whether it be disease, or be preserving an aspect of the past, or preserving a moment of the future that you know is coming. You don't even know that it's coming. And essentially what happens is, as we mentioned in the last video, you're not really dealing with the future as it is in direct experience. You're dealing with your construct, with your projection of the future. But the mistake you make there is twofold. Number one, the obvious mistake is, well, if I'm going to Louisiana to move and to find my future wife, I've got it in my head that that's what's going to happen. I'm going to go to Louisiana and I'm going to find my future wife, and it's going to be magical and it's going to be romantic and it's going to be all this great stuff. The obvious problem with this is that the future you experience and the future you conjured up in your head are two separate futures. So the very obvious natural follow-up of this is an extreme bitterness and resentment of saying, well, hold on now. My future was supposed to be this awesome, spiritually romantic thing by finding my wife, my lover, and having kids and all that stuff. And now instead all I get is a bad paying job, I go on dates with women who I don't get along with, and now I'm drinking and smoking again. What's up with that? So that's the obvious problem. Okay, so that's why the future for most is a faded song of wistful regret for those who are not yet here to regret. But think of the other way. Let's say you do go to Louisiana and you do find your future wife and you have kids and all that stuff. The problem with thinking about it too much in the future is that you've essentially you've taken an advance on a paycheck for that moment. So the experience, let's say you're getting paid $3,000, and that $3,000 represents the experience of meeting your future wife. If I'm constantly thinking about these things, and I'm constantly going over my head and I've got it all planned out, essentially what I've done is I've taken an advance on that paycheck. So I take 4 $750 advances on the paycheck. Now that I'm here, I have no money because I took an advance. That's another example of the future being a faded song of wistful regret for those not yet here to regret. Here's another obvious example. Take a death. I've actually learned this myself. Sometimes I worry about my mother dying or my father dying because I know that's going to happen eventually, and if that doesn't happen, that means I will have died. How about this, Justin? Why don't you stop mourning a future that hasn't happened yet and stop projecting your own way of doing things? And you have absolutely no idea when that's going to come or how you're going to react in direct experience. You have ideas, you have systems in the mind, you have models that you've constructed in this metaphysical abstract concept space. You don't have the direct experience with the full constitution of what it means to be a human being in that experience. So why don't you stop getting all worried and anxious and neurotic and freaking out about your mom's death when it's going to happen? If anything, you should be using that to fuel or inform the present significance of, now I'm going to treat my mom with respect, with love, I'm going to be present with her because I do know that's going to happen. That's a healthy way of integrating the death as the future. The unhealthy way, the way most people do, which is the faded song of wistful regret, for those not yet here to regret, that's the one we talked about earlier, right? You're so worried about the future that you can't see that it's shaping your present dissatisfaction. There you go, right? Okay, so press between yellow leaves of a book that has never been opened. So that's another visual image of the future. So back in the day, if you wanted to preserve a rose or a flower, I don't know if this is true or if this was like folklore or whatever, but you would press it between a book, and then when you would open it, in theory, you would get a fresh rose. In reality, what happens is you petrify it, and when you open the book, which of course the book in this case has never been opened because the book is the future, but when you open the book, you get this sort of, it's kind of hard to describe. You could definitely tell it's a rose, for example, but it's faded and it's dying and it's withering, but it's not quite dead yet. It's in this weird stasis, kind of like in Synecdoche, New York. Okay, and the way up is the way down, the way forward is the way back. That, of course, I think is a reference to the paradoxical future of 4D integral consciousness. No longer are we doing the linear first, second, third. That's rationality, that's fine, but we're trying to transcend that, and we do that through paradoxes. So the way forward, or the way up is the way down, and the way forward is the way back. Quick example. Take consciousness structures, a perfect example. We went from the 1D magical to 2D mythical to 3D mental, now 4D integral. But 4D integral going forward, transcending, also presupposes that we're also going back, because to integrate the other consciousness structures with the mental, well, you have to go back to when they originated and integrate them. So now that you've integrated them by going into the past, you are going forward. So that's a quick example of the paradoxical going forward by going backwards. In an interpersonal level, you could say, I'm going forward by going back and checking and doing some soul searching based on how my mother's, verbal abuse affected me and how that's shaping me in my 40s, and maybe I can't have a good relationship. I'm going forward by going backwards. And you can go backwards by going forwards, of course. You're so obsessed with what you think is entitled to you in the future, your belonging, your birthright, right, that you've regressed into these immoral and psychologically deficient stages. Don't do that. You cannot face it steadily, but this thing is sure. Notice steadily. Steadily implies this linear causality. We're done with that. This is a beautiful line coming up. That time is no healer. The patient is no longer here. What a beautiful line. So what that means, in my opinion at least, I think that's a play on time heals all wounds, that classic phrase, time heals all wounds. No, the person who suffered the wound is not the same person who reflects on that suffering. Why? Because no man steps in the same river twice, right? I think we might have touched this, but we'll do it very again briefly. When you cross the river for the first time and then you go back, you are not the same person as you were before the river, because now you've accumulated the experience of crossing the river. Same thing here. Time is no healer. Why? Because the patient who was initially injured is not the same patient who is now, after the fact, reflecting on that injury, because he has accumulated, or she has accumulated, experiences that make them different. All right, and you can tell that's the case because in the next lines it says, when the train starts and the passengers are settled, to fruit periodicals and business letters, their faces relax from grief into relief, to the sleepy rhythm of 100 years. He said, you are not the same people who left that station or who will arrive at any terminus. That's a modern, contemporary way of saying no man steps in the same river twice. So I've also come to realize this. When people say time heals all wounds, it's not really the case. It really is this idea of the accumulation and integration of new events. That's what's really happening. What's really healing all the wounds is you've accumulated experiences, events, psychological states that have allowed this healing to take place, whether it be cycling through emotional calmness, and let's take your mother dying or something like that. You're obviously going to be in a pretty rough psychological state, but eventually, even if it takes 2, 3, 4 years, you will kind of calm down. I'm not saying you're going to be happy, but you will calm down. Okay, so as that happens, and as you're cycling through experiences and different poles of the soul, if you will, well, naturally, hopefully at least, time heals all wounds. Now, that's not a guarantee, of course, because some people regress into bitterness and resentment, but yes, time heals all wounds in the sense that you can't experience and integrate new, you can't accumulate and integrate new experiences that will help this healing without time, because you can't do it all at once. You can't do it if you're frozen and static in space and static in time. No, so that's my take on time heals all wounds. Yes and no, right? It's not really time, though it is a key ingredient. Okay. When the train starts and the passengers are settled, to fruit periodicals and business letters, their faces relax from grief into relief, to the sleepy rhythm of 100 hours. Fare forward, travelers, not escaping from the past into different lives, or into any future. We kind of touched on this in the last one. When I'm moving to Compton, well, maybe that's not the best idea. When I'm moving to Oregon, okay, it's really stupid of me to move somewhere else running from the past, because the past shapes the present, is therefore is present, and therefore I'm just bringing the past with me. I think, oh, I'm going into this new place, it's going to be great. No, I'm not running from any past, because that's impossible. You could integrate the past through conscious awareness, through the conscious awareness of how the past shapes you. That sounds great, but running from it? No. And what else does he say? And not escaping into different lives or into any future. That's another thing. As long as I get into Harvard in the future, everything's going to be fine. It's going to be a different life. As long as I get into this certain club, as long as I make president, as long as I do this. No. No, 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 no. Time is a sphere, and you are at the center. Past does not go away by simply changing scenery over time. No. Ridiculous. Okay, what else? You are not the same person who left that station or who will arrive at any terminus. While the narrowing rails slide together behind you, and on the deck of the drumming liner watching the furrow that widens behind you, you should not think the past is finished or the future is before us. Again, this is more time freedom, more of an acknowledgement that past and future shape present. At nightfall, in the rigging and the aerial, is a voice descanting. So I interpret this as spiritual. That's my opinion. A voice descanting, that's a spiritual voice. And this is what that voice says. Fare forward, you who think that you are voyaging. You are not those who saw the harbor receding, or those who will disembark. Here with the hither and the farther shore, while time is withdrawn, consider the future and the past with an equal mind. Okay, so I think what he means... when he says when time withdraws, it can be a little difficult to understand what he means when he says that. When time is withdrawn, consider the future and the past with an equal mind. Very important line, but it can be difficult to decipher. I think what he's talking about is normal clock time, when that time withdraws. And when you're no longer focused on 7:02 p.m., 7:03 p.m., you're focused on a different form of time, whether it be time as a quality, whether it be cyclical time, polarity. It could be anything. It could be psychic temporicity. It could be this idea of time as a sphere. When time withdraws, what does he say? Consider the future and the past with an equal mind. So that's another good example. Time has withdrawn in the sense of its linear progression. It's gone away for a second, and what we've been able to do is glimpse the clear, transparent time as a sphere. And that's why he immediately after that says, consider the future and the past with an equal mind. So he says when time is withdrawn, how can time withdraw and then also the future and the past can be considered, even though time is withdrawn and past and future belong to time? No, what he's talking about is mental clock linear time, the strictly rational time. And he says, of course, consider the future and the past with an equal mind. Both shape the present. Consider the yin and the yang. Also, to compound this interpretation, if you want to call it that, or this reading, I think when time withdraws, I think honestly what he's referencing, I don't know if he does this specifically or consciously, I wouldn't be surprised if he's referencing Heidegger there. And the moments when you withdraw from being practically absorbed in the network of relations, that wouldn't surprise me at all. So that's what I think he's meaning. When the normal understanding of time that has been ingrained in your mind, when that withdraws in time freedom and time, the point of convergence where all these different forms of time meet, is transparently perceived, that I believe is what he's talking about. Let's see, well, time is strong, an equal mind. At the moment which is not of action or inaction, you can receive this. So let me see. So I believe the moment not of action or inaction is a spiritually elevated moment. That's what I'm talking about again, to further this idea of the time being withdrawn. So we're not absorbed in the terrestrial, practical, social things of action or inaction. Rather, we're transcending those ego-driven one or the other goals. Actually, now that I think about that, is probably what he's trying to say here. Either action or inaction, determined by our egos, essentially. And then he says, of course, at the moment, which is not this, that's a spiritually elevated moment. And then this is what happens when you receive that spiritual elevation. This is what you perceive. Quote, on whatever sphere of being the mind of a man may be intent at the time of death. Unquote. All my Gebser bros, all my Gebser girls. Sphere of being. This is not by any means a random or incidental reference. This is profoundly, I don't even know what word to use. The sphere, of course, if you don't follow, is the prototypical symbol of the 4D integral consciousness. Time is a sphere. Obviously, the earth is a freaking sphere. All of it. It's all sphere. Spheres are very important to integral consciousness. Watch my Gebser series if you want to learn more about that. So when you see this, we are in 4D integral consciousness world. On whatever sphere of being, that implies that there are multiple. If there are whatever sphere, there must be one or the other. Because if there's only one, you wouldn't say whatever sphere. You would just say being, right? Brilliant. So whatever sphere of being, it's interesting to think of what he means by that. But there's so much you could... each consciousness structure could be perceived as a sphere. The sphere of individuality versus the sphere of collectivism. I shouldn't even say verse, and the sphere of collectivism. These are two separate spheres that complement and that we both kind of live within or move through at time. It could be the terrestrial sphere and the spiritual sphere. There's all sorts of different spheres, but it's brilliant. It's beautiful. So on whatever sphere of being the mind of a man may be intent at the time of death, that is the one action, and the time of death is every moment, yes, which shall fructify in the lives of others. Okay, what does he mean by that? So even at moments of death, we should be intent, which is to say spiritually satisfied and present even in that moment. And every moment is a death. Why? Because no man steps in the same river twice. So if you have to take the moment to step over that river, well, in that moment, a new you has been born, while simultaneously the you that did the you before you stepped over the river has been killed, has died. So literally every single moment is a new world onto itself, a new life, while simultaneously being a new death onto itself. This also totally works in accordance with quantum mechanics and time's unfolding, with this idea of making it seem as if time is this linear, spatially causal thing, or these million little elementary particles firing off. Well, each one of those particles, again, is like a new moment onto itself, because in each new moment, the availability of the structures is different. Some moments are more magical, emphasized. Some moments are more mythical. Some moments are more mental. Some moments are more irrational or integral, emphasized. So yes, every new moment is both a birth of something new while the death of something old simultaneously, all in accordance with quantum mechanics and the integral understanding of time. And the time of death, this is the one action, and the time of death is every moment, which shall fructify in the lives of others. So what does he mean? What is the action he's talking about? I think what he's talking about, the quality of presence that you can offer to people around you. That's a person. Bill Clinton actually was described this way. People would, obviously he was the president of the United States, very busy man, had a ton of interests. People would talk about him, and they would say, I'm just a no one. I'm no one in that world. And he would talk. I talked to him for about 2 minutes, and he made me feel like I was the most important person in the room. He didn't think about Iran. He didn't think about the Middle East. He didn't think about China. He thought about me, Justin. And that is what that person is referencing, is the quality of his presence. And that, as T.S. Eliot has informed us, shall fructify in the lives of others. So if you want to be that shining star, if you want to be that beacon of radiance for people in your life, and you kind of like the idea of being like, man, I like being around Josh, he always makes things better. Focus on the quality of presence. How do you do that? Recognize how past and future shape the present moment. Drop the good, keep the bad, is what it is. And do not think of the fruit of action. Fare forward, O voyagers, O seamen. So, of course, seamen would be those who participate in life. Life is the vastness of the external and the eternal. We would be seamen. You who come to port, and you whose bodies will suffer the trial and the judgment of the sea. There you go, right? The sea integrates the good and the bad. The sea integrates evil and the good. The sea is not just this perfectly romantic, kind of the stereotype rationalist imposed on poets. Sometimes that's that's true, sometimes it's not. Or whatever event, this is your real destination. So Krishna, as when he admonished a journey on the battlefield, not farewell, but fare forward, voyagers. That famous T. Eliot phrase. Fares forward, act, and act within regard to the present moment, and you can paradoxically access the past and the future by doing so. I love you guys. Look how short section 4 is. That's all we'll be doing. We'll do that next video. Thank you guys so much for continuing to watch, and I will see you guys soon. I love you guys.